welcome to another episode of Boxing TV. We bring the fighters to the fans. Coming up on today's show, former world champion James Buster Douglas and the biggest upset in boxing history. Stay tuned. A massive welcome to my next guest and someone I've wanted to speak with for so long, since the start of my boxing career. I've always wanted to know the story of Buster Douglas and what it was like from his side, especially against, I'm sure he knows it's coming, the win against Mike Tyson. Buster Douglas, what an incredible fighter you were. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure is absolutely all mine. There's no doubt about it. No doubt at all. So I just want to talk about you and your career and get, what we like to do here is learn to understand the fighter, not just the person who had the gloves, but the person behind the gloves, which is, really important for people to understand. So starting from literally the very, very beginning then, what got you into boxing?
Well, I was actually basically introduced to boxing at birth. My father was Columbus's first national Golden Glove champion in the middleweight division. And like I said, I was introduced to boxing at birth, through my dad.
Now, one thing, James, I don't really know too much, mate, is you and your amateur background. I really don't know. And there's not really anywhere I could find out. So tell us a little bit about kind of what you achieved in the amateurs, mate.
Well, I started at 10-year-old, and
okay.
I fought my first Golden Gloves, and I won it. Then I won the state fair, which is a national title here in Columbus, Ohio, and I won that. And then I fought several different invitationals, and won that as well. Won a lot of those. Had a pretty successful amateur career. When I got up to about 15 years old, I fought in the Junior Olympics, and I won that.
Okay.
And then when we went to South Dakota, which was an extraordinary trip, we drove from Columbus, Ohio to South Dakota.
Whoa, how long did that take?
It took about 3 days.
Oof.
And it was a great trip, though. It was me and 3 other guys from Columbus. We were Region 6. And got to visit Mount Rushmore. And it was at the time when the Indians were threatening to blow it up. And, it was pretty intriguing. It was watching that. I remember George Washington's nose was like 365 feet long. And the gentleman that did it with a jackhammer. It was amazing, that, it's one of the 10 wonders of the world. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. It's weird though. You say Region 6. It sounds like you're from the Hunger Games or something.
Right. But it's the region that we came from.
Yeah.
It was, I guess, coming from Ohio, and that was an experience in itself. And I got to enjoy that. I won my first fight, lost my second fight, but it was an enjoyable trip overall. Stayed in the Army barracks in South Dakota and was freezing at nighttime, and it was a summer event. But at night it got awful cold there in the mountains. I remember that. And then the food was, we stayed on the Army barracks, and that was an experience. It was pretty enjoyable.
That sounds incredible. So it's a good start then. So traveling around, a good start to.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely. And then after that, I got into other sports, basketball, football.
Okay. So you turned pro in 1981, if I remember rightly. And to be fair, you had a really good start to your pro boxing career. However, you did have, I'm talking first, let's say 20 fights, something around, but average, just averaging it out. You did have a couple of losses to lesser known names, didn't you? Until, before Tyson, if you just want to call it that.
Yes, because that was a learning process. I was getting back in it at a different level of the game because at 15 I stopped boxing completely, and then I came back to it at 21 as a professional, so I had to get reacclimated to the boxing game. And that was just overall experience in itself. Because last
Yeah.
time I had really had been competitive was as an amateur. Then I came back to it as a professional, which is an entirely different
Yeah.
game. So I had to learn it all over again on a higher level, much higher level. So that was an experience in itself, and it was just a process that I had to
I
go
see.
through.
I see. So you've kind of gone from boxing, then having a big break, and then going back to boxing again. So you kind of took that first, however, fights back, learning the game. And of course, the pro game is different too, isn't it? So it's an
Much
education in
different.
itself. Yeah. I
You gotta
mean,
be very disciplined.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely no doubt about it. And just in your mindset, so your first few fights, you did great, you did really well. But like I say, a few lesser known names you took losses to. At this stage, did you and yourself think, that I'm gonna go on to be champion of the world?
Yeah, I've never doubted that. I felt very confident in my abilities. It was just wanting to get back into it and have a better understanding and get my body and my mind focused on my priorities in order. And it was just took some time to do that. And then it was with those losses became just very big disappointments, but I became even more determined because I knew I had the ability to do it. It was just putting it all together.
Yeah, yeah, and it's cool that you've been so honest as well with that. To be honest, James, that you're saying I'd had to learn again, which is yeah, that's very honest of you, and I like that. I like that very much. So you then the pinnacle of your career was when you fought Mike Tyson out in Tokyo. This was something like 9 years after you went pro. How did you feel ahead of the fight? Because as far as I know, and please educate me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have some really bad news ahead of the fight with Mike Tyson?
Yes, my mom, she was very ill at the time. She had been ill for going on a couple of years, and it just was got to the point to where she was no longer able to, deal with the illness, and it just got overwhelming, and she ended up passing like a couple of weeks before the fight. But it was just a very hard time for me. But it was like throughout my career, I had a lot of disappointments, and I was able to struggle and get through it. And this was the biggest one, no doubt, was the passing of my mother
James,
just prior to
absolutely
the fight.
inspiring, mate. Absolutely inspiring how you did what you did from losing your mum. I mean, this was just before the fight, wasn't it? With
Yes,
Mike
two
Tyson.
weeks,
Wow.
2 weeks before the fight. But
Were the times that went through your head thought, maybe I'm not going to fight?
never at all. It never entered my mind. It made me even more determined.
Yeah.
Doing it for mom.
That's really cool. That's really, really
Mm.
cool. So going into the fight with Mike Tyson, you were an overwhelming underdog, weren't you? There's no doubt about that. You were. I mean, what were the odds? What were the odds on you to beat Mike Tyson?
It wasn't even they didn't have odds. It was just I
Whoa,
think eventually when they did go up, it was like 42-1.
really?
Yeah, but that was just before the fight. They
Yeah,
finally put up some odds. One booking agent.
that's craziness. And how did it feel to be such a an overwhelming underdog?
Well, I knew that going in because at that time he was a very powerful individual. Mike was, and he was proven that he was legitimate. He wasn't doubt in everybody's mind whether he was legitimate or not. But I felt confident in my abilities, and I knew that I had what it took to get the job done.
Yeah, awesome. So the fight was out in Tokyo, wasn't it?
Yeah,
How were you treated over there? Tell us a little bit about your time staying over there before the fight.
yeah, we were over there 2 weeks prior to the fight, and it was great. I had a good time. We were left alone and able to focus on what we had at hand, and it was just it was a great experience, and then I was pretty excited because many years before that, my father fought in Tokyo, and so it was just like sharing a moment with my dad as well.
Yeah,
So
it's really
it was
cool.
pretty positive.
Yeah, I really cool. I love the fact that your dad fought too. That's a really cool thing. So you're kind of it's in your blood, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, awesome. So you pulled off the impossible against Mike Tyson, and you stopped him, which to this day goes down as one of the biggest upsets. Not to you, I'm sure, but to sporting history is one of the biggest upsets. And I suppose the closest thing to that is when Ruiz knocked out Anthony Joshua. But I think that yours was even more of a shock, wasn't it? At this
Big time.
stage, it definitely. Tell us a little bit about the fight from your side.
Well, going into the fight, I felt very confident, and I felt positive in my ability. I know I put the work in, trained very hard for that fight, and I was ready, focused, and all I had to do was just put it together and display it. And it was just putting it all together, staying relaxed, and letting my hands go.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I want to talk to you about something actually. I do quite a lot of research before I speak to any fighter, and I saw Mike Tyson talking about you, and talking about when he put you down. And he said, and you've probably seen it, there's no doubt, where he's standing on stage and he's watching the video next to him and he's counting down 1, 2, 3, and he counts to 14. Well, 13, but he's now saying 14. Tell us about your thoughts on that. Did you really get a longer count, or tell us about that?
A longer count than he did. No, I think it was just the human count. I mean, it's always been like that. It wasn't like the clock itself. The referee gave it the human count. And if anybody was favorite, to get a edge, it would have been Mike because he was the
Yeah,
world champion at the time, and basically it was his road show. So, but I still feel that it was a fair judgment, fair count. And besides, he never counted. His count was longer than mine, so
really.
yeah, his count was longer. His was 17-20.
Well, they didn't. We
you
didn't want
know,
him to get put to sleep, did they? So yeah, awesome, awesome. So following this fight, how did your life change then? Because it must have completely changed. Tell us about
it
that.
changed. It changed from night and day. It was like I left the United States as an underdog, came back as a king, and it was like looked at and pretty overwhelming at the time because it was like so unexpected that nobody had given me a chance and given my camp a chance, and we went over there focused and in unison and put it all together and came out on top, and it was just a wonderful thing, magnificent thing, and it was just shows that if you believe in yourself, anything's possible.
I know this might sound to some people pretty bad, but it's literally been the pinnacle of your life, hasn't it? And I mean, that kind of everybody in the world will know Buster Douglas from. You mentioned that name; they know exactly what it is. I mean, I've got to ask you a question on that. How is that? What's that like as an individual to know that
Well,
everybody remembers you for one thing?
it's a great feeling,
Yeah,
because out of all the people in the world, and it's a lot of
yeah,
people in the world,
yeah.
I will always be remembered for that. So it would always be remembered that I did exist, and it was a good thing. It wasn't like leaving a bad legacy behind. It was like something that I set out to do with all the people in the world. That one individual could do something that could stand out and always be remembered for. And I
Always,
achieved,
always, yeah.
and I achieved that, and it's a great honor, and it's a wonderful thing.
Brilliant. And you then, after winning, the world titles against Mike Tyson. You went on to fight Evander Holyfield, didn't you? Now,
Yeah.
I want to kind of just have a look at what your mindset was like at this stage. So you've gone from. They say you don't wake up at. Well, Marvin Hagler said it. You don't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to run with silk pajamas. And I've spoke to many fighters in the exact same position. But were you motivated ahead of this fight with Evander Holyfield?
Well, by the time I got in there with Evander, so I had went through so much that I think that it had a big effect on my fight leading up to Evander because it was just, if you look back, you'll see that, my regime as the heavyweight champion was like no other because it was an ongoing fight, not just in the ring, but outside the ring.
Okay.
Because I had to go through the court system, being drugged and all over the country trying to figure out where we're going to have a court session at. It got to be a real big mess because not only being an upset, it was a major upset and it upset a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they all guns were pointed at me, so to speak.
So just
You know,
rewinding a little bit now. I don't normally like talking about the personal side of things, but it is good at the same time because it's part of your history and it's part of your legacy, So and sometimes it needs to be applauded. And I honestly think that for you are a massive inspiration. You're a huge inspiration. But you mentioned there about going through struggles. Just tell us a little bit more about that then. What do you mean by these struggles?
well, it's like once winning the title, I had to defend it. Basically by the court system. I
Okay.
switched up from being a fighter in the ring to a fighter outside the ring
Right.
to just be called the heavyweight champion of the world. I was up against a lot of obstacles, where they were trying to say it was a long count and that the fight should be called a no contest. And I had to defend myself all leading up to you know my first defense, defending the title.
I
So
see. I
it
didn't
was an
know that.
ongoing battle, and through that time I had suffered depression
Yeah, yeah,
because it became overwhelming at some time, and
yeah.
then it was just a tough time, and then it was like a few weeks prior to that, like okay, well you can, if everybody settled and decided that I was the champion and I can move on, but by then I was so beat up and badgered that
Yeah,
pretty hard to bring things back together. But it's life. It goes on, and I recovered from that, and I'm back in the
yeah.
game of life, so to speak, and I
Oh,
feel
that's cool.
great and excited about the future.
Great. So, just from my understanding, so following your win against Tyson, you were, in court a lot, and they were basically telling you that you needed to this to be a no contest to take your title away from you. That must be really, really hard. You could almost, if that was me, I'd almost feel like I couldn't call myself champion until I get the go ahead, which that must have been a horrible situation.
Yeah, it was like it was unprecedented. It was like something I had never experienced or had ever seen before. It was like I upset not only Mike Tyson, but I upset a lot of people that was, you know, associated with him, and they didn't like the fact that he had lost, and they tried to put up as many roadblocks and as they could to stop me from moving on. Which it was a pretty tough time. It was like, why is everybody coming after me? But
Yeah.
it was pretty hard to understand at one point.
I can imagine. I can understand that. I can definitely appreciate that. I didn't know them things. Thank you so much for sharing that with me, James. That's very good of you. Thank you. So, as far as kind of you went in with some absolute monster punches in your career. Who's the biggest puncher you came across in your career?
Well, they all hit hard, but I don't know. It's just it's kind of hard to say. It's pretty touch and go because if you're a heavyweight and you got a big punch, it's kind of, you just gotta have a strong chin and can take a shot. And but they all hit hard. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them hit hard.
Yeah.
And it's just about being able to withstand it and continue. Just not panicking and sustain
Yeah.
a cool and calm pace.
Awesome. So Mike Tyson, just as obviously the name that seems to plague your life, plague your life, and still be a positive on your life, I suppose. He recently fought Roy Jones Jr. In an exhibition fight, and I read in the press that you were thinking about that you'd take the fight with Mike now. I mean, is that something that you're interested in?
No, no, it's just something that I was playing around. Somebody asked me a question. I was in a silly mood.
So yeah, I'll jump in with him tomorrow.
Right. Just talking. But
Yeah.
it was an entertaining fight. I enjoyed watching it, and it
Yeah.
was just hats off to both of them because they did a great job.
It just shows, doesn't it, how much the press talk absolute tripe. They haven't got a clue what they're on about. Not all of them, some of them are all right, but yeah, they like to share that kind of thing, don't they? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a really a legend of the sport, I like to try. I speak with all different kind of fighters, anything from legends to world champions to current world champions to even down to journeymen. They all deserve the same respect. But I also like to speak with the kids out there and the kids coming through. So, what advice would you give to fighters currently coming through the ranks?
Well, it's just to stay focused and work hard, and when you get an opportunity, make the best of it and give it all you got. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. You can be happy with that. You can live with that, because it's the worst thing to go in there and not prepared, unprepared, and not being able to, give it your best, and because you never know if you might not get another shot at it.
Brilliant. Well, what have you got to say for me? What have you got to say to all of your fans out there?
I appreciate all the fan mail and the positive encouragement, and thank you so much. Power to the people.
Awesome. And I just want to say a thank you, a massive thank you for coming on the show here at Boxing TV, and we wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Pleasure's all mine.